Hello everybody and welcome to Heavy Debriefing's Top 50 Albums of 2022. Before we start getting into the list, I do just want to say that if you don't keep up on what I do with Heavy Debriefings, you already missed 2/3 of the list. That's right, I have already 100 other albums that I have up covered on thatdrummerguide.com. For the full list known as Heavy Debriefing's Top 150 Albums of 2022. For the YouTube version, I wanted to just focus on 1/3 of it and just be able to cover 50 albums, which is already an insane amount for the average person. Too low for my own personal taste, which is why I do have the rest covered already. But I do appreciate everything that is going on with this. And I really hope over the next 5 days, with 10 albums apiece, that you enjoy everything that you check out. And for the rules on this list, I'm not going to cover them in video form every single time. They'll be in the description below. That way, if you have a problem or you don't really understand why I do what I'm doing with this, you can just read the list and you'll understand. So with that said, let's get into number 50. Coming in at number 50 is the band Celeste with Assassins. This is a band that I truly appreciate what they're doing. And with every album, it feels like they're finding their sound more and more, and I really feel with Assassins, they really nailed it. Of course, the core sound is very much in the black metal territory. But the great thing about it is they expand just enough. They're able to show things with black gaze, they're able to show things with atmospheric black metal, they're able to do straight up black metal. And one thing that makes this really stand out from so much black metal that's been out this year is the fact that the production is pristine. Yes, you can hear everything that's going on. It doesn't sound like it's like the equivalent of raw chicken sitting out for a few days. It just sounds crisp and clear and full and punchy. And I know it's the cool thing to be true and cult, to try to be, the black metal style for whatever reason. And it can work out fine. But you don't need to do that. You can have production value that's actually really good. And that's what Celeste does here, and I appreciate that so much, and it makes the songs worth hearing even more, especially when you know everything that's going on. And despite the fact that I am just a stupid American and I don't understand what's going on with the words because I don't speak French, I really love the emotion that's behind it, because you can hear the emotion in the vocals. You can especially hear it when you can hear things going on musically. And for that, it makes this album truly stand out. So if you want something in black metal that actually has great production value of something that you might hear on even Top 40 radio, I highly recommend checking out Celeste. Coming in at number 49 is An Abstract Illusion with Woe. This is some really cool stuff here, especially if you appreciate more of a modern edge to your progressive death metal. While there is, of course, those classic progressive death metal sounds going on, it's got that great modern tinge to it where it might have some more modern metal feels to it, it might have more keyboards, it might have some more stuff that you would hear in kind of more poppy music at times, maybe industrial or dance music. But all of that said, it is nice, heavy, brutal, and some great emotion behind it as well too, which you're going to be hearing a lot in this list, because that's the music I gravitate towards the most, is something that you can feel right in here. And with that said, in Abstract Illusion, especially with what they've been able to being capable of now here in 2022, has been reaching a lot of people, and a lot of people have put this as the best album of 2022, and I totally understand why. Because this stuff is absolutely killer. Fantastic songwriting, killer production. It's got everything that I'm looking for in a prog death sound. And if you want something that has that great sound to it, and again, just a little bit more modern, definitely check out Woe by An Abstract Illusion. Coming in at number 48 is Wilderun with Epigon. And seeing this band progress from more just progressive death metal and a little bit of symphonics to what they've become now, which is something that I normally prescribe for bands like Panopticon or Nekashwin, but I really think it applies to Wilderun here, where I really feel they are North American folk metal. And by that, I mean that they show off the more extreme metal sides. Of course, you got your progressive death metal, symphonic death metal, a little bit of black metal thrown in there, at least musically anyways. But they also add a great accompaniment of Americana, folk music, Western country, the kind of stuff that you would hear in North American folk music, so North American folk metal. And with that said, Wilderun, I feel, has put out their high watermark in the band so far. Just seeing the progression of this band and what they've been able to be capable of, being able to show off the concepts and themes throughout this album, seeing the progression of everyone in the band has just gotten stronger as songwriters and musicians on this album. The songwriting is so filled to the brim with great moments. Some that really capture a lot of great imagination. There's a great ebb and flow between something that's more nice and fluffy to absolutely brutal and extreme, which is something that is very much needed in this kind of music, and I'm so glad to see that they actually pulled it off. But of course, with all of that said, it is a fantastic, fun listen from start to finish, and I think there needs to be more stuff like this out there. And I think, especially with the Opeth influence that is heavily within the band and being able to show off more sides for something, if you enjoy something like Neav Lascaris, Opeth, and other similar progressive death metal bands, I think Wilderun, especially with all the extremes from the light to the heavy, is something you just may enjoy as well. Coming in at number 47 is Queensryche with Digital Noise Alliance. Now, if you would have told me that Queensryche would be putting out their third best album in 2022, I may question your thoughts on stuff. But ultimately, it does come down to the ear of the beholder, doesn't it? And I'm so glad that I actually did give this album a chance, because you really realize that Queensryche is at the top of their game right now. And it's incredible to hear that. Yes, I honestly think that this is the best album that Queensryche has done since 1990's Empire. And of course, with that, and Mindcrime being their two best albums, you can interchange them. I think both of them have their merits for which one's the better album. But this is definitely third place for me. And, seeing Todd LaFleur being able to show off everything that he's capable of vocally and just being able to hit those great falsettos, being able to have that signature Queensryche tone that he's been able to nail down album after Jeff Tate has left, and of course the first appearance of Casey Grillo behind the studio drums. Of course, he's been with the band for a while, but now, seeing what he's really capable of here, just fantastic. And with all that said, it is like a modern approach to classic Queensryche. It feels like classic Queensryche, but it's all new material. It doesn't sound dated. It doesn't sound like they're repeating themselves. It feels like they just took place like in 1991, but went through a time warp into 2022, started recording with modern technology. And for that, it is incredible stuff. Great songwriting, killer production. Everyone in the band just feels like they're the most inspired they've been in decades. And yeah, this album reminds me of why I fell in love with Queensryche in the first place. And it just might for you too. And if you like that killer, classic progressive metal sound, but just through a modern filter, definitely check out the new album from Queensryche. Coming in at number 46 is Threads of Fate with the Cold Embrace of the Light. Now, this really hits a lot of different territories, but it still has a great cohesive sound. With main songwriters Vikram Shankar of Redemption, Lux Terminus, and of course, a great album I'll be talking about later in the list, which I'm not going to give away, but if you know who he is, and you know other work that's come out, you know what I'm going to be talking about. And of course, frontman John Pyers. Being able to see these two come together for a full-fledged LP after a magnificent EP is just killer stuff. For those not in the know, this is more on the gothic side of things. Like, I feel like this is really something that hits kind of home with more of the vampire-esque life. And you can really hear that throughout the music as well. Whether you appreciate stuff from him, Cradle of Filth, Dimmu Borgir, Sentenced, Serenity, even stuff like Epica. There's something for you here throughout this entire LP. If you enjoy more of the darker, gothic sides of symphonic and progressive metal, and of course more of the extreme sides as well too, well, it is not entirely shown off the entire time. When it does hit and it does get into those evil, extreme, brutal moments, it is just a great contrast from the soothing, dark overtones that go throughout most of the album. And with Threads of Fate, it is just killer stuff here, and I think you'll enjoy it as well if you enjoy anything that I just mentioned here. This is a bit more of an underground album, really going below the radar, and I hope with this, more people will check it out. Coming in at number 45 is Michael Romeo with War of the Worlds Part 2. Now, when you normally hear of a solo album, especially a guitarist solo album, you're going to think it's more just showcasing what he's capable of on the guitar and possibly other instrumentation. Well, Michael Romeo does indeed shred on this album. He does experiment with more instrumentation, everything from Egyptian instruments to 7-string guitars. This is just a full-on, awesome hard rock, heavy metal, progressive metal album. Now, this is something which is in no slight to anything that Michael Romeo and company does in Symphony X, but I feel like this is the best Symphony X style album since Paradise Lost. And when you have a vocalist like Dino Jalusic being able to just have that great raspy tone behind the music that's going on and still being able to shine the way it does, it takes already great songs and makes them phenomenal. And it goes all over the board here. Of course there's shred, but there's some great progressive metal moments, there's some great hard rock moments, so many great choruses, killer production. The songs are just so much fun to listen to, and it's a great album to listen to from start to finish. And if you like your music a bit on the heavier side of the progressive metal routes while still being absolutely catchy, this is the album for you. Coming in at number 44 is Imperial Triumphant with Spirit of Ecstasy. Now, this is not the most avant-garde, bonkers album of 2022. I think that honor belongs to the French band Pensées Nocturnes, which, if you want to check out my top 150 albums, go over to thatdrummerguide.com and look up that particular one, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. But when it comes to extreme blackened death metal mixed with jazz, mixed with avant-garde and experimentation, it's hard to find anything that hits more of those territories while being so cohesive than Imperial Triumphant. Now, for those who think that this is just different for the sake of being different, you're not a jazz fan, and that's okay. But you gotta understand that there is more to metal music than just writing catchy choruses or writing the most brutal riffs. Sometimes it's being able to show off what you're capable of. And that's what's going on here with Imperial Triumphant. And the fact that they were able to hit so many different territories, have so many guest spots, and of course, on the song Mercurius Gilded, the fact that you got Kenny G and his son, Max Gorlick, who is a phenomenal musician himself. Absolutely check out the band The Mantle. Seriously, killer stuff. But seeing them trade solos between the soprano saxophone and guitar is just beautiful. It's great seeing father and son being able to show off in a style like this. And of course, most people are just talking about the Kenny G part, but I love the sentimental value of it being father and son. And they're both incredible musicians, being able to play over some of the most sinister sounding jazz that you will ever hear, because it's done through blackened death metal. And if you're up for something that's actually adventurous, and if you're one of those people who says that, oh yeah, I listen to everything, this will challenge your conceptions. Coming in at number 43 is the band The Offering with Seeing the Elephant. This brand new LP shows the band becoming a bit more on the mainstream side while also maintaining the most brutal and progressive aspects of the band as well. It's very challenging in that respect, but it flows together so seamlessly. Yes, there are more straight-ahead moments on here. I've seen some people say it has more of a nu metal tinge, which I don't hear, but if you think it is, great. I think it's just more of a more mainstream commercial kind of sound, but it doesn't take away when it does get so heavy. There's some great brutal breakdowns that happen in here, some great progressive moments that are going on as well here, vocal moments that remind me so much of a band like Fair to Midland, and of course the instrumentation, guitar solos, production, songwriting, everything that goes into this album. I can really feel the band is becoming more of a cohesive entity on this album, and I feel as the band continues to grow, we'll see the band become even stronger. I love their debut album so much, and seeing almost kind of a polar shift with this album is something that I didn't know needed to be in the right direction, but the more that I listened to it, it really was the right way to go. And it's got me very excited to see where the band's going to be going from here. So if you want something with some soaring and brutal vocals, crazy instrumentation that can go from something that's so simple and melodic to brutal, and if you just want something that's a little off the wall, I think The Offering might be a band for you. Coming in at number 42 is an amazing discovery for me this year, thanks to Sean the Metal Pigeon over at MSRcast and of course themetalpigeon.com. It is a Finnish band known as Einvigi, and an album that I'm absolutely going to butcher the name of, and I deeply apologize, Joukoji Kasane. Now, this is a very, very black metal album, but it has a 90s alternative rock kind of production style to it, which was sold to me by Sean himself, saying that it's like black metal if it had the Cranberries style of production and the guitar tones and the overall atmosphere. And I feel that is a very apt description, and it sounds so strange to be able to say that and read it on paper, but in execution, it totally makes sense. Like, if you hear someone like the Cranberries just going a little bit more extreme, I think this is a good representation of what that could be. But really, with that, it is absolutely solid black gaze, folk metal, black metal. If any of that sounds intriguing to you, I highly recommend checking out Einvigi. This is an underrated album, especially over here in the States, and I don't want it to be underrated. I want it to be rated the way it should be, which is very high. And that's why it's number 42 on this list. And closing out this segment of the top 50 albums of 2022, as chosen by me, Josh Runquist of Heavy Debriefings, the only member of Heavy Debriefings, but still, is the band Moontooth with Photograph. Now, as I wrote in my written review, this is either the proggiest hard rock band or the most hard rock and prog band there is going today. And with all of that said, they write stuff that is so catchy that in a better timeline, this would be stuff that you'd hear on Top 40 Rock Radio. Well, at least over here in Minnesota, that is not the case. If it is in other places, I thank you. But seriously, this is just really killer stuff. The vocals, I know, is a bit of a watershed feeling. Either you love the album, either you love the vocals on this album, or there's something that could steer you away. For me personally, I feel they add so much to the album and there's such a great intensity behind it that it just works out so well. And of course, musically, everything can change on the turn of a dime. You can have something that's more straight up melodic, hard rockin', and then all of a sudden, it just goes into a progressive metal moment where it is so hard to even comprehend what the time signature is. And that's something that's very intriguing to me. And of course, all of it is very cohesive. At first listen, it doesn't make a lot of sense, maybe, if you're not into that kind of stuff. If you're more of a straight-ahead kind of person, this might be a little jarring for you, but the more you give it time, the more it makes sense, and the more there needs to be bands like Moontooth in the world. And it's really awesome to be able to close out this part 5 of the top 50 albums of 2022, with Moontooth. And with that said, I thank you very much for sticking around for this part of the list. Tomorrow will be part 4, where I talk about albums 40 through 31. And of course, if you don't want to hear my sexy voice, you can go over to thatgermanguy.com and be able to see my written reviews. I'm not reading a script. What I'm saying here is going to be different than what you read on thatgermanguy.com. That way you can have a little bit of a different influence behind it, depending on your style, whether you like things written or you like it heard audibly. And of course, check out Spotify, where I'm going to be putting up the entire 150 albums of 2022. with a song off of each album for a great playlist for you to be able to check out some brand new music, just in case you'd rather have it that way instead of it spelled out for you. And until tomorrow, for Heavy Debriefings, this is Josh Runquist saying, see ya.